07 Star Citizens, finally time for us to get some info about some upcoming patches and some new features that have been added to patches in the progress tracker with a fairly dense roadmap roundup. For those who don't know, every couple of weeks, CIG release the roadmap roundup where they talk about here are the things that are being added to the patches, here are some things that are getting committed, moved, changed, here are things that are getting added to the progress tracker, just generally giving us information about what work is actually being done at CIG and when we could maybe sort of expect some things. So it's good to see the roadmap roundup back and yeah, with this much information. So let's hop into it. I'm going to start with the information that was given to us about some things that are going to be happening in 3.20, and we are starting with the physicalized cargo updates. Following card has been added to release view targeting Alpha 3.20, adding new functionality to accommodate the release of the MISC Hull C. This includes both automated cargo landing at LEO stations, as well as SCU containers up to 32 SCU. So this is something we were pretty much expecting. We saw this in ISC probably 2 months ago now, where they were actually showing us all of the work that they were doing on the MISC Hull C. In the video, we got to see how it actually gets its cargo at the moment, as we do not have freight elevators in the game yet. So it's more or less a no-brainer that this got added. It's pretty much a necessity to come with 3.20 with the Hull C. The important thing, though, is that it does confirm that 32 SCU containers are going to be a thing in 3.20. The reason that this is important is because that means that we're going to be able to transfer these 32 SCU containers some way. And my assumption is that the tractor beams that got buffed semi-recently are going to be the ones that are actually moving these 32 SCU containers. But when we go to pick up or drop off cargo, it's going to be automated for now, hopefully. I do think there should still probably be some sort of player interaction between the loading and offloading so that it's not completely different to every other cargo ship that exists. The next one is actually a pretty large one, and it means a lot more than some people might think, which is that the Crusader A1 Spirit is being added to the 320.x release. So this is the bombing variant of the Spirit series. It's, once again, not super surprising that we're going to be seeing this coming out soon because we already have the bombing mechanics. The A1 just uses much smaller bombs. The thing that's important here, though, is the 320.x release. Not super surprising that we are getting a .x release for 3.20. It's become sort of the norm recently. But think about the timing of these sorts of patches. We still don't have 3.20 in PTU yet, which means we're probably not going to see 3.20 live until September, maybe October, which means a 3.20x release is very likely to be the IAE release this year. So I would expect the A1 Spirit to be released in November alongside any other ships that come out at the same time. And it's kind of the right time to release new ships like that anyway, so makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And now that we do have confirmation of a 3.20.x, the retrieve consignment missions on the Crusader platforms are going to be moving to a 3.20.x release. Due to encountering several issues with Rastar while setting up locations, these two deliverables did not pass their final review and need additional work before the release to the live servers. Therefore, these features will remain tentative on release view and will now target a 3.20.x release while remaining in the 3.20 column. This one's a little bit disappointing. I was really excited for some new missions, but it's also, once again, kind of unsurprising. This sort of thing happens quite often. These things get pushed back a little bit. And, you know, if it gets pushed back a couple of months, that's okay. In my opinion, there are still plenty of things in 3.20 to keep at least my attention. I don't know about you guys. Let me know. You're a little bit disappointed by now, sort of what's been happening to 3.20. Moving on, though, because the big news is about all the stuff that has been added to the progress tracker. It seems like the mission team, the guys who have been doing a ton of player-facing work over the last couple of years, continuing that, and we're going to be seeing a ton of features that they're working on over the next couple of months to years. So firstly, the new contracts. Starting off with Steal Evidence, a criminal mission type where players are tasked with infiltrating security post-career and stealing files from Crusader Security for a hefty payout. This one feels like it would be relatively easy to implement. We've been seeing a lot of these types of missions where we are now infiltrating these secure areas. You know, we have some SPK missions already. We can grab drugs from there. We have the new Microtech mission where you're stealing UEC from essentially an ATM. So this mission sort of just feels like a progression on that. And then putting this mission on SPK makes a lot of sense because, I mean, you can just get rid of your crime stat while you're in the process of this. Maybe steal some drugs from the loadout machine. You can kind of just do a couple of things built in together and do a lot of crime and a lot of profit. So makes a lot of sense to put it in a location like that. Next up, we have new missions cargo hauling. Making use of the freight elevators feature, this mission type will have players hauling large quantities of cargo to earn both AUEC and reputation. This is a very important one. There are so many people that do trading in Star Citizen, so this makes a lot of sense. Now, we're not going to be seeing the freight elevators feature for some time, I think, at least probably not until 4.0 or a 321, whatever patch comes after this 320.x. But having a mission like this where you're actually just getting paid for the transfer of the cargo is kind of where trade sits. Like cargo hauling and trade do need to be split apart a little bit right now, because right now you're risking your UEC when really cargo hauling should be you're risking someone else's UEC. So this brings a ton of things into it. There's a lot of ways that they could go about this. There's a lot of ways that we could get both legal and illegal versions of this feature. I can assume, you can go to Grimhex and probably pick up some illegal things if they put freight elevators there. Or possibly, you go to Pyro and you go to Ruin Station where there aren't really any laws. There's probably freight elevators absolutely full of maize that you're tasked to delivering into a legal location. And this is also a really good way for people who want to get into cargo to not, once again, have to risk their UEC necessarily. Now, I do think when it comes to player cargo hauling, like if I'm going to move your cargo, there should be still risk involved. But in terms of, PvE cargo hauling, this is fantastic. I'm a huge, huge fan of this. Much better than the pizza delivery missions. Next up, we have Steal Recover Cargo. Steal Recover Cargo missions will see players recovering and or stealing cargo from both derelict and active ships and hauling the cargo to its intended destination. This one seems like it could probably be implemented super soon. If you didn't know, on salvage missions at the moment, there is supposed to be, and I do want to point out there's supposed to be, in every cargo area, there is supposed to be cargo right now. And you can take that, you can go sell it for profit. It's additional salvage. This is essentially the same thing. It's just you're being told to take that cargo to a specific location. So it 100% makes sense to exist. It's definitely a type of mission I want to be in the game, and feels like it's not going to take necessarily as long as some of these other mission types. So hoping that one arrives without issue. The next big one is restoration contracts. Utilizing the repair functionality of the multi-tool salvage attachment, players are tasked to restore ships from bow to stern, patching up the hull, replacing missing or faulty internal components, and replacing weapon loadouts in new salvage yard locations. This is pretty cool. So they're definitely starting to, recognize that people do want the repair gameplay to be in game at this stage. There's a couple of things about the description of this that gets me a little bit more excited too. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to also, if you wanted to, accept this mission and just salvage their things if you wanted them. So like you could do the repairing, but you could also just go in and be like, you know what? I'm just going to steal the stuff from your ship instead of, repairing you. This one feels like it's going to take a long time, I would say, though. It's going to be interesting to see how they actually get this to work. Presumably you need to bring the correct weapons, the correct internal components. Perhaps you're able to salvage those components and those weapons from other locations and bring them along. Not super sure how they want to do this, but it is pretty much just the reverse of the salvage missions. Let me know in the comments below. Are you a player who's excited for repair gameplay and this is something that you're actually keen for? Because at the moment, there's not really any reason to repair anything in game at the moment with your repair tool. While that is it for the contracts, it looks like we are finally taking another look at reputation. This is something that I've been really excited for CIG to work into more, because reputation is a very important part of every MMO. And the way that they've been talking about, the benefits of completing certain missions and the deficits of not completing certain missions or doing something that goes against a certain company has been a very important part of how they think the Star Citizen world should exist. So let's have a look at what they're actually bringing in. Firstly, shop discounts. Players will have the ability to receive discounts in certain shops based on their reputation with affiliated organizations. Fantastic. This is something we've been asking for a very long time. It's going to be nice to know that presumably you do a bunch of work with Crusader Security, then you can go to Crusader Security and buy their weapons, armor, ammo, whatever it might be, for cheaper. That's fantastic. That's definitely something we want. I do want to say, though, that I don't think there's many things in the game that necessarily need a discount. That, like, perhaps when this comes out in the far future, it'll also come with a big rebalancing of how much everything costs. But if you put these shop discounts in the game right now, it wouldn't be super meaningful because it's just too easy to loot things and it's too easy to make money. At the same time, if you applied that discount to, like, ships, so let's say you had a really, really good reputation with Hurston, Constantine Hurston, Hurston Dynamics, or maybe the Hurston Security, and then you got, you know, a pretty hefty discount, maybe like a 10% discount or something on a ship at New Deal. That's pretty good, actually. But I don't think that would happen. I feel like this is mostly going to be to do with like security stores. We know that with Bounty Hunter version 2, which will eventually come out one day, hopefully, that there are going to be like Bounty Hunter stores. So that would obviously be within this purview, I would assume, because they are direct shops in relation to those locations, with those reputations. But it'll be interesting to see. I also wonder if they'll reverse it and start giving you, you know, you have to pay more if you come to this location with a bad reputation, which brings in interesting ethical questions, but it's a space game, whatever. Next up, and probably the most important part about reputation, is hostility. Players will encounter AI that are either friendly or hostile based on their reputation with the organization the AI belong to. This also includes different friendly fire thresholds and defense responses. This is the most important part of reputation, and probably the thing that's going to take the longest amount of time for them to get right, I would assume. Hostility is a huge part of this. You should, if you've done a ton of work with Crusader, I would assume that they're going to stop scanning you as often, or they're going to allow you into certain bunkers that they previously would not. Likewise, I feel like if you've done a lot of work for the Ninetales, there should be a point where those Ninetales stop pirate attacking you unless you actively seek out an engagement. Once again, there's a huge, huge part of what makes MMOs really enjoyable is reputation. It's also very important because it's going to allow the game to say, hey, it's much harder for you to go into these locations, or much easier for you to go into these, you know, other locations. It's basically a much more expanded of the current reputation system, except instead of just unlocking larger missions, you're unlocking AI behaviors. This also just makes reputation more important in general. Obviously, you're going to want to decide, you know, which security force do you want to spam your reputation with, right? Crusader Security and Ninetales are 100% diametrically opposed. I believe that's the word. Whereas maybe Microtech Security and Ninetales don't hate each other as much. They're probably not super friendly, but it's probably easier to keep a positive reputation with Microtech and Ninetales than it is with Crusader and Ninetales. So this completely alters how you'll change playing the game day to day. And then as a part of all of this, how your reputation is calculated is also going to be getting an update with sandbox triggers. This feature will allow for players to have their reputation increase or decrease with organizations based on their actions in the persistent universe, separate from missions. This in turn will either allow or prevent players from accepting missions for particular organizations. I'm really curious to know what sort of things will affect reputation in this instance. I assume, you know, once again, going to a restricted area is going to give you negative reputation, or going to an area and just, you know, attacking some pirates that aren't part of any mission that you've got would give you, you know, positive reputation towards the security force in the area, that sort of thing. But just need a bit more information. Not 100% sure exactly what this means. All it's really saying is, hey, there's other ways to get reputation gains and losses now. But you can definitely see how some of these are probably going to come out sooner than others, that's for sure. I don't think we'll be getting the reputation stuff anytime soon, but it's nice to know that it is on the progress tracker. Now, it is worth pointing out as well, some of these tasks are already been in progress for a little bit. Some of them are finishing. That does not mean that those features are finished. It just means at the moment, the sort of sprint that they're doing for these has been completed. So That's it from me today, guys. I'll probably be back tomorrow with another video about the new ISC where they're talking about salvage munching, which is a really, really big deal. So make sure you check that one out. Let me know in the comments what you think about this roadmap roundup. Like I said, it's a pretty dense one and there's a lot of information to go through. And when do you think we're going to see a 320.x? Like I said, I think we're probably going to see 320 in October at this stage as a full release. So 320.x I don't see coming anytime before IAE, but time will tell. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for watching the video.